AskReddit, which villain do you sympathize for, and why? Baldur from God of War 4. He was the product of an unloving and abusive marriage between Odin and Freya, after the end of their marriage to Odin, was stripped away of everything she had: her freedom, the trust of her people, her spirit. The only thing she had left was Baldur, but seeing that he would die a needless death in the future, she cursed him with immortality, resulting in him literally not being able to feel anything. This curse, while meant to protect him, drove him insane with rage against his mother. And in the end was what caused his needless death. Fate in stories is often the forecasted byproduct of people's attempts to avoid it. Oedipus is the cornerstone of that drop. The guy in Meet the Robinsons, poor fucker, Goob, at least he wins the game in the end. Hey Goob, what's up? Cool binder, want to come over to my house today? They all hated me. That line struck me so hard, because it brought into focus how trauma can shape a child's perception of the world. Goob was so hurt that he legitimately could not see that people wanted to be his friend. His life became miserable because he saw everything through that bitter lens and made everything out to be the way he wanted it to be. And a lot of kids in his position don't have the help and support they need. Allow the Robinsons to shake off that skewed perception. Takes a long drag on a cigarette. Yeah, it's a great movie. Honestly, I think that's the first movie I ever watched as a kid where I felt bad for the villain. Poor guy just wanted to get a good family, but because he helped blonde kid with all his projects he ends up being tired most of the time. Skeletor, the true heir to the throne and rightful ruler of Eternia, passed up for being mixed race, so he acted out, causing an accident that disfigured and fatally wounded him. He was left for dead by a family with magic powers, having to resort to serving evil and living out the rest of his days as a skeletal shadow of his former self. Did he get the name Skeletor before or after the accident? After. He was previously known as Skeletor. Doofenshmirtz. He was a hard-working man in a difficult childhood, always being overshadowed by his younger brother and a baking soda volcano. He has broke the boundaries of science that almost seems impossible but is ignored throughout his career as a scientist. As every man does, he seems to have trouble finding a place in the world, so he tries to commit to poetry only for that dream to be snatched away and crushed in front of him. He was a man with a vision, a dream to take control of a small government, to change the lives of many surroundings and many people. But desperate times call for desperate measures as he is forced to take drastic measures to fulfill his dreams. He wanted to be a loving father and give his child the childhood he never had. He was a visionary at his time that society didn't allow, which demonizes him to a gross pulsating image of a man that could have brought hope and light to a better future. His mother didn't even show up to his birth. It all started at my actual birth, where both of my parents neglected to show up. The show did bring it back for him though. It ended with Vanessa telling him that he was actually a good guy and should give up evil. So he did, became super rich from inventions, and lived happily ever after, probably. Vanessa doesn't know how good she has it compared to her dad. King Dedede from the Kirby franchise. The dude gets possessed every Tuesday to the point where he's not doing any evil villain stuff, also he cares and tries to protect his kingdom. Just take a look at Kirby's adventure. He took the star rod from the Fountain of Dreams to protect Dreamland from Nightmare himself. Dedede basically saved everyone in Smash Brawl. It was adorable when he tackled Kirby to hug and pet him. I've not played much Kirby, but aren't Kirby and Dedede frenemies? I think so, yeah. Mr. Freeze. Just a guy willing to do whatever it takes to save his wife from dying. It felt so bad in the Batman animated series when Nora Freeze is revived, and leaves him. In the comics she got revived a few years ago by getting dropped in the Lazarus pit, then takes the name Lazarus. She could summon alchemical fire. It was dumb as hell. Later in New 52 they retconned that, and just made her cryogenically frozen, and Victor fall in love with her and think she's his wife, which is fairly creepy really. That got retconned, and she went back to being Victor's wife. Victor managed to unfreeze her a few months ago. November of this last year was the issue. And she became a villain too, becoming Mrs. Freeze. Also she dumped Mr. Freeze. All three of those sound absolutely horrible. I feel like the writers must have been being pressured into writing something about his wife getting revived. It's definitely not something that'd be easy to tackle, and those sound like some uncharacteristically bad writing compared to the rest of the Batman series. Though, I'm not really familiar with a lot of the more recent stuff. I think I prefer Arkham Knight's ending for them to all these. She's unfrozen but reveals she was conscious and could hear everything Mr. Freeze did for her. She still loves him but doesn't want to live another 10 years frozen solid for a cure that might never come. So she decides to live the last of her days alive with Mr. Freeze until she dies, whereupon he'll kill himself to be with her, not be without her. When did that happen in Arkham Knight? Did I suppress it after all the tank battles? It's a DLC, Season of Infamy. Includes a bunch of other bosses. Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets. People don't understand how bad real Ogg is and how it changes people and the pain they suffer. If you hate which side of the bed you sleep on and think it's Ogg, maybe it is, but you have no idea how bad it gets. So damn true. When people are like I have to push the chair in, I'm so Ogg lol. Yeah, you have no idea the mental havoc and destruction it causes. Medusa. Punished for being raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple and being beautiful. Her two sisters stood by her side through thick and thin and fought to keep her safe from all intruders. Perseus creeps in while they were fast asleep on a bed and silently beheads Medusa. He then cowardly escapes, leaving the cries of her sisters, and becomes a hero. I really wish this story didn't exist. Or that she was accurately portrayed not as the villain, but a victim. The boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, because she was only a villain because she had to be. That was the role assigned to her. She was loyal to her mission and to her country until the very end. Snake, history will never know what she did. No one will ever learn the truth. Her story, her debriefing, will endure only in your heart. Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot. Plus, if you beat the entire game with only silenced tranq guns and without being seen, you get invisible camo. How the hell do I do that? Determination. Captain Hook. Captain Hook must remember not to scratch his toes. Captain Hook must watch out and never pick his nose. Captain Hook must be gentle when he shakes your hand. Captain Hook must be careful, opening sardine cans, and playing tag and pouring tea, and turning pages of his book. Lots of folks I'm glad I ain't, but mostly Captain Hook. Shel Silverstein. Just recently watched Disney's Peter Pan for the first time since I was a child. Not sure if it is a sign I am old, but my girlfriend and I both agreed that we didn't think Hook was that bad, and that maybe Peter is actually the real villain. He just bullies Hook and antagonizes him the whole time. Edit. Misspelled Disney because of my big sausage fingers. I remember watching this as a child with my sister and my father for the first time. Saw it a couple times after that, but my dad always kept hating Peter Pan and telling us he was really smug. As a kid I'd never noticed, but recently I rewatched and Peter Pan definitely is an asshole that is taunting Hook all the time. No wonder he is a little rough around the edges. In the original play, Peter Pan is absolutely the bad guy. The Lost Boys don't grow up because Peter kills them off once they get too old unless they manage to escape. He is a centuries-old child who gets murderous whenever anyone doesn't play his games his way. Hook is depicted as fairly noble by comparison. He has principles and ambition and is a worthy adversary, despite his mortality. He's also supposedly one of the Lost Boys that got away. A fake. He is just trying to keep others from getting killed and to stop Pan, which would make him the hero, not the villain. There's a fantastic novel by Christina Henry called Lost Boy, The True Story of Captain Hook. And Hook is definitely not the villain in that story. Love that book so much. The Wicked Witch of the West. Dorothy killed her sister, stole her shoes and refused to give them back. Young woman travels to a strange land, kills and robs the first person she meets, then teams up with 3 strange men to kill again. We're off to commit a murder. A wonderful murder in Oz. Spoilers for a 24-year-old movie ahead. The villain from The Rock, General Hummel, was just trying to secure military benefits for his soldiers killed in Black Ops authorized by the US government. This money was supposed to come from a slush fund from illegal weapon sales also perpetrated by the government itself, and his threat against San Francisco was initially a bluff. He was basically trying to look after his men, but became desperate after exhausting the proper channels. Edit. Wow, did this blow up? Woke up to 200 notifications, geez. General Hummel was an anti-hero, rather than a villain. I think he was probably one of the most conflicted and well-written performed movie antagonists of the 90s. Ed fucking Harris for the win.